Hello, my name's Scott Brewer, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit on the topic of the legalization of marijuana in the United States. This topic's a source of diversity and controversy in our country. Right now, we're actually having people move from about 25% of the country not being in support of being in support of legalization of marijuana, and now we're close to 50% at about 46. First, I'm going to talk to you about the difference between decriminalization and legalization so you really understand what I'm talking about. I'm talking about legalization. Then I'm going to move on to the body of research that we've accumulated about marijuana and its effect on individuals. And then I'm going to move on to, before I close, the benefits to a country if it does legalize marijuana and the economical values that come along with it. So first off, we'll talk about the difference between legalization and decriminalization. Decriminalization right now is done by some states in the U.S., and this is only in these states. The federal government still has the ability to charge it as an illegal offense if it falls underneath federal jurisdiction. This is also only for small quantities of marijuana, usually underneath an ounce. If you are caught in these states with a larger quantity than that, it is still punishable by law. Legalization of marijuana, it frees you from all charges that are marijuana related. That's including use and possession and even distribution, even though your distribution would have to fall under certain business regulation laws. These would be regardless of quantity of possession or use also. And the legalization is a much different approach than what we're thinking about now in the United States. This allows adults to make their own decisions on the subject and decide how they feel about it, if they're going to use it, if they would allow other people to use it, and just the whole criminal aspect of it. This sounds like a bad idea for a country that is supposedly having substance abuse problems, and that's why we have these regulations. But later we'll talk about the actual effects of legalizing marijuana and the effects that come with the substance abuse and the amount of people that actually do use it in other countries that have legalized or at least decriminalized it. So let's move on now to what we do know about marijuana use. And we'll start with some of the bad things. And first off, we know that if you smoke, it's still smoke. Like tobacco, it's harmful to your lungs. Although marijuana smoke has been proven to be substantially less harmful than tobacco smoke and actually has a lot less substantial harmful side effects than alcohol. Alcohol and tobacco are both legal, and people do enjoy their use despite their well-established, substantial, and undeniable dangers. Both of these are also far more habit-forming than marijuana. A little bit about the gateway drug theory. This theory is based on the idea that if you start smoking marijuana, it's going to increase your odds of having hard drug use in the future. Most hard users of other drugs have tried marijuana first. The reasoning that we find behind this is really bad. The exercises that we've done in class shows the error of the assumption that just because you have used marijuana and then you go on to use a harder drug, that marijuana was the cause of the use of the harder drug. Opposing this is the idea that hard users now, whenever they buy marijuana, are involved in a illegal drug trade. If you were to legalize marijuana, now they're not going to go to, when they first try the marijuana, an illegal drug operation to buy it. They'll be able to buy it from a store that has it legalized for them. This will really reduce the gateway that you have to allowing people to access the harder drugs because they will still be in an illegal drug market. So that really takes out the whole gateway theory of why you should not use marijuana. You don't have to be involved with all the underground works that drugs usually are dealt in. Now we'll go to some of the benefits. First, benefits to the individuals, and then we'll move on to benefits to the country. Individually, it has a long list of now what we have called medical uses. And this really throws everything in the face of it being a Class 1 drug in the United States because a Class 1 drug is clearly defined as having no medical use, and now we know marijuana does. I personally support marijuana as a use as a painkiller in front of other pills and things like oxycodone and Percocets and Vicodin. All of these are extremely habit forming, where marijuana is not, and they do have side effects that make marijuana look like a completely medical wonder. All these things are man-made. Marijuana just grows in the ground and we can have it any point in time. Doesn't cost near as much money to actually get to customers, and has a lot more benefit to the customer. YouTube group called Young Turks does a news blog that is supported by the Marijuana Policy Project. They reported on some of the benefits of holding in marijuana smoke. First off, it actually can increase your lung capacity. It also helps some individuals that suffer from asthma. It keeps them from having attacks if they do this on a regular basis. Other students show tobacco use gets deeper inside your lungs. If you inhale tobacco smoke, it's a lot more harmful to the deep tissue in your lungs, and the tar is actually a lot worse and sticks in your lungs. Marijuana usage mainly stays in the outer lung tissue. So now let's go on to a little bit of the benefits to the country that decides to adopt this policy. The most obvious that stands out to me is the $7.7 billion that we spend in state and federal enforcement of marijuana laws that we have now. That would easily, $7 billion, go into, from the expense and enforcing the drug laws that we have now, would move into the income column for our country. So now you have a $15.4 billion swing, maybe more, in your annual revenue, and who wouldn't want $15.4 billion more per year? And that's just from taxation. You also have, if you were to legalize marijuana, a $565 to $905 million industry that is completely untapped as a cash crop industry. This would provide jobs for people anywhere from farming all the way down to retail sales and everything in between. In the first year, Colorado had $21 million in sales tax revenue that it generated. Missouri would be predicted at having a $46 million sales and tax revenue, and we now in Missouri spend $67 million to enforce all of the marijuana drug laws that we have, and that's over $100 million change in revenue for just the state. And in Missouri, marijuana arrests account for over half of all drug arrests. Of these, 88% are for only possession. That means just having a quantity on you, not necessarily distributing to anybody else. All these 88% of people and over half of the drug arrests in Missouri, if we were to keep those people from being incarcerated for these kinds of things, would also save you tax money and having to pay for food and benefits that criminals receive in prison when they go, and would also save tax dollars in that way. Conviction also has, for just marijuana, since it's a Class 1 drug, serious social downfalls, and it can cause a loss of possibly your car, your house, certain pieces of personal property, and a lot of cases jobs, and even your kids. If you're caught with drugs, it can be a problem, and they can be taken away from you. So what do other countries do? Why in the United States do we not have marijuana legalized and we have an issue and aren't sure what to do? Well, in Germany, they have 26% of the population that regularly uses marijuana. The German Constitutional Court has no criminal sentences for personal use or small possession of marijuana. Portugal has a 7.6% use in the country, and they are completely decriminalized. There is no criminal sentence at all for the use of marijuana, and they only have a 7.6% of the population that uses it. Australia's at 39%. They have a state-based legislation, and they have no enforcement of minor marijuana charges. And the Netherlands and Amsterdam that you always think of when you're talking about the legalization of marijuana, they only have a 17% of their population that actually uses marijuana on a regular basis, and there they have no criminal punishment for it. Also coming out with all these different reports on other countries who have either decriminalized or legalized marijuana is the Myron Report. And it's stated that these countries that have actually legalized marijuana also in common have the following. Crime reduction is greatly reduced in these countries. You have a reduced arms demand, enhanced respect for law enforcement officers, a great amount of reduced police corruption, and legalization of marijuana could also cause a reduced rate of alcohol and tobacco use. Actually, one of the great opposers to the legalization of marijuana in California was members of the beer industry who were afraid that if people had marijuana, they would no longer need alcohol, and it would reduce their revenue. Also, a big point is this would greatly reduce the cartel income, the amount of money that they make supporting the illegal drug trade of marijuana. All of this would then go, instead of to the cartel as a profit, would go to the government as a profit. And this would not only just switch the hands of the money, but just like marijuana would help the government in allowing us more tax dollars and income, it would also shrink the size of the cartel by not allowing them to have as many people needed in the cartel to distribute marijuana anymore. They lose that whole source of their business structure, and since their whole organization would be reduced in size, they would also be a lot more controllable. We could start spending, even if we spent the same amount of money for the control of these harder drugs after we decriminalize or legalize marijuana, it would go a lot further and wouldn't all be spent pretty much on controlling marijuana anyways. A lot more could go into trying to stop the harder drug trafficking. Other countries also experience, the ones that have decriminalized or legalized marijuana have reduced hard drug usage. Most people don't feel the need at that point to get another sort of substance. They are okay with sticking with marijuana. So in closing, the fight right now that we're spending millions and billions of dollars on to keep marijuana off the streets and to incarcerate all those who are using it, it's just unnecessary. It should no longer be a Class 1 drug because we have already said that it does have medical uses. There are small side effects to marijuana, but these side effects are not nearly as bad as most of the drugs that are given to patients in the open market as prescriptions and things from doctors. Marijuana has not necessarily a pain-killing attribute, but does the same job for the people with a lot less negative effect on their health. It also would close this gateway, once again, that I was referring to. You would no longer have to be involved with illegal organizations selling drugs, even if it was just marijuana or hard drugs. You would now no longer have to be involved in anything like that and wouldn't have that gateway access to those drugs. It turns all these expenses that we're spending into income, just pretty much flips it right to the other side of the board. Creates a substantial amount of jobs, which is always a thing every country is looking for. We have a pretty high unemployment rate as it is. It would reduce jail sizes and, like I said, save money in that way. And all the taxes we would take from the cartel and start going into tax money and things like that, which would also be very beneficial. And this is why I support the legalization of marijuana in the United States. Thank you.